I'm Katherine Brown. I have the opportunity to serve as the Chief Governing Officer of the Board of Directors. And it is my honor to represent you. I appreciate the fact that you allow me to do that, to represent you this weekend, to represent you every day, because it's just a privilege to be with such individuals of your stature and to know what you give to an organization that you actually own. So I am delighted to be here, and I just want to say on behalf of our entire board of directors, which we will introduce in a little while, thank you for making the effort to be here. Thank you for choosing to be select.
Great, thank you very much, Katherine. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mark Reichle. For about a year now, I've been the CEO of Select Registry, but I know many of you as a long-standing member of the association. I've been working on the staff since 2018 and thoroughly enjoy being here. It's been nice to get to see all of you. I thought last night was really a fun event, and it was refreshing to be able to see folks face to face, to talk to folks, and even if you're comfortable with that, to give each other a hug. So I too would like to welcome you all, and we have a great few days ahead of us, and I look forward to sharing all of that with you. I have the pleasure of going through some of the logistics of the meeting today, so bear with me as we go through some of the details, which we hope will make it a little easier for you to maneuver through the day. But first of all, the first thing I'd like to speak about is the agenda. So the agenda for the day is posted on your tables. There's a placard on the table. Many of you probably, when you checked in, use the agenda or use the QR code to put the agenda on by pulling up the frictionless guest app. If you didn't do that and you would like to pull up the app, the QR code is posted here. So I tested it yesterday in the back of the room. If you point your camera to the QR code and pinch it so that you can get the picture, it should pop up. But the information is also on the table. It's also posted out in various areas if you need to see that. And again, thank you to Frictionless Guest App for providing this to us. The restrooms, if you haven't seen them already, if you were to go out the doors in the back next to where the coffee is, take a right and another right, you have to head down a very long hall, turn the corner, and the restrooms are right to the right there. The signs are posted. They're up a little high and to your right as you're going, but they'll direct you down to that particular spot. I would also just like to mention there are a couple of other things on the table. Everybody's got a bottle of Fiji water, so thank you to our friends from Fiji Water. And if you were at the event last night, they were also there providing us with a tasting of their wine. So thank you for that. It was really quite tasty. So a big round of applause. Capturing the events of both last night and the things that will be going on today is Beth Campbell. So you will see Beth wandering around taking pictures. So be cautious because everything's being documented. I would also say when you see Beth come up to you, make sure that you smile because we can't be responsible for a frowning picture that we post. So it's all your responsibility. Also on the bags we have, or also on the tables, we have some goodie bags. So please feel free to help yourself to those. We'll have lunch served down the hall in the middle of the day. But if you need a little snack, there are snacks on the table to help you get through the next section. So please enjoy those. I'm just making sure Darlene said everything I was supposed to say. Darlene had a whole list of things for me to say, and I'm always concerned that that list is going to be ever changing, and I'm going to forget something. So I think that we're good to go. So. I would like to take an opportunity to introduce to you the folks who are really responsible for not only making this event happen, but making sure that everything that we do at Select Registry goes smoothly. So sometimes in your work life, you get the opportunity to work with really, really enjoyable people. And that's certainly the case for me right now. We have a really exceptional staff of not only capable people in terms of doing the jobs that they do, but folks who really, really care about the association, really, really care about moving the association forward, care about making sure that your businesses do well, and Select Registry is a part of that. And so I would just like to take a second to introduce you all to them in case you don't know them. So if the staff could stand up as we're going through the introductions and just wave so everybody will know who you are. And I do encourage you that throughout today, throughout this evening, when we're at the gala, that you please come up to all of us and talk about your concerns, talk about the things that are working well for you so that we can move the organization forward. So first of all, I've mentioned Darlene once already, but Darlene Blankenship is our Director of Membership. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that Darlene is the brainchild behind this whole day and a half of events. All of us like to think that we know what's going on, but really Darlene is the one who does, and she's done an exceptional job. And I think that you all saw the beginning of that last night. We'll continue that throughout the day. We have a wonderful evening planned this evening, and Darlene has spearheaded that. The staff has been extremely supportive in all of the components of that, but a special thank you to Darlene for being the mastermind behind all of this. Outside at the registration desk is Paige Johnson. So Paige handles all of our customer interface. You all may speak to Paige when you have a gift certificate to redeem, or if you have an issue with a rewards guest, or you need to make an adjustment to something like that. So Paige handles all of that, and then provides the rest of us with data support when she's not dealing with issues with customers. Our Director of Quality is Carrie Paw. I think that we are about at a point where Carrie Paw has had discussions with all of you. We're just completing our cycle after this year of quality assurance evaluations. So Carrie came on board in 2018 and completely turned our quality assurance program around. She developed a very extensive tool that all of our evaluators use and established a system of evaluation that I think is unparalleled. So thank you to Carrie not only for developing what is really a good program and what really drives what our organization is all about, quality assurance, but also thank you for holding us to the standard. And she has a great group of evaluators. I know a couple of them are here this evening, or this morning. Thank you very much for reaching out to our members, talking to them about their businesses. It's really appreciated. And then new to the organization is Heather Taylor, who is our Director of Marketing. And Heather is tired of me saying new to the organization. I can guarantee you that. But 2 more days, Heather experiences her 1-year anniversary in a couple of days, and then we'll get off the new to the organization. Is that a deal? Okay.
Good deal.
I'm sure many of you have spoken with Heather. She is working tirelessly to help with our interaction with guests related to social media. Heather handles our e-blasts. She implemented a strategy for PR this year that we're going to be building on, and so it does a remarkable job for us in a very short period of time with the organization. So yeah, how about a big round of applause for Alrighty, now we're going to move on with the meat of the day, so the good stuff now. It's my pleasure to introduce to you all our keynote speaker, who I think will help all of us think a little bit differently about how we market our businesses. Sonia Thompson is a customer experience strategist and consultant, and like all of us, a business owner. Sonia helps companies deliver inclusive and remarkable customer experiences that fuel growth and customer loyalty. Sonia writes columns for Inc. and Forbes magazines, focused on how brands can use inclusive marketing, belonging, and remarkable customer experiences to grow. Sonia has spoken at numerous conferences such as ours and has educated tens of thousands of people on the importance of inclusive marketing. If you're a podcaster, you might want to check out Sonia's podcast. She's the host of a podcast called Inclusion and Marketing. So, Sonia, welcome to you, and we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. All right, I'm going to tell you a little story. A couple of years ago, I was going through Instagram, like I often find myself doing, and I came to the page of an influencer I follow, and she was talking in a post about a story about how her and her husband had just gotten to the place where they adopted their daughter, how they got the call right away. They had to drop everything, fly from California to Las Vegas, and of course they couldn't just take the child and go back home. They had about a 2-week time period where they were staying. So she was in this post talking about the journey that they had, everything that was happening, and then she went and talked about the hotel that they stayed at for those 2 weeks. And she was just giving a lot of props to them, basically, talking about how much they saved them, how much they changed their experience for the better, and they were just people who became like family to them in that first 2 weeks that she and her husband had with their precious little daughter. She said specifically that she wanted to make sure that she could model her brand after theirs because it had such an impact on her. I love this story. I was all choked up as I was reading it. And then I felt like, okay, I love stories of businesses who do fantastic jobs of delighting their customers. So I wanted to go and find out a little bit more about this brand. So I clicked through to their Instagram page because she tagged them in her post, and then my excitement quickly waned because I got a very clear signal: this hotel isn't for you. So I looked at the pictures, they looked kind of like this, and then I saw some more that looked a lot more like this, and then I found myself scrolling through the entire account. I scrolled through the entire account, every photo, and the only people who I saw that looked like me were people who worked at the hotel. I did not belong there. I vowed to myself, I will never go to that hotel. I will never go to one of that brand because it's a chain hotel, because I felt like I didn't belong. Being different is hard. There are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that we have to deal with, and we all have some sort of difference. Some of those differences are visible, some of those aren't visible, but we all have some sort of difference in some sort of way. And we have to figure out how to deal with them as we go through life, navigating through life. But what we don't want to do is whenever we're spending our money, whenever we're trying to get a particular need met, and we get to choose who we spend our money with, we definitely don't want to spend it with people who don't make us feel like we belong. Now, just to pause for a second, I know a thing or two about being different. If you don't know, I'm a Black woman. Here's my husband. His name is Jonathan. He's Argentine. He and my daughter here are here with me this weekend. We lived in Buenos Aires for 4 years. We just moved to back to U.S. Well, I moved back to the U.S. He's a new immigrant to the U.S. He's still learning English, right? So we have this mixed race, bilingual baby, or navigating having an immigrant here. I'm left-handed. I follow a gluten-free diet for health reasons. I've got a lot of different things going on here. So I know firsthand what it feels like to be frustrated as a consumer, where I get these signals where I don't feel like I belong. And I also know what it means to be delighted whenever I feel like I've had brands see me and who I was and what my needs were. And this is important because life is about belonging. We all want to feel like we belong. We're all on this quest to feel like they belong. And because life is about belonging, business is about belonging, right? And one of my favorite definitions of belonging comes from Chris Brogan in his book, The Freaks Shall Inherit the Earth. And he said, basically, belonging is about finding that place where you finally let out the deep breath you had no idea you were holding, and feeling with great certainty that the people around you understand you. That understanding is a beautiful feeling. And it's something, like I said, we're all searching for as we go throughout life. So I did a survey in preparation for you all here today. So you're going to see a lot of the results throughout this presentation. But there was a couple of questions that I asked were open-ended. So I wanted people to let me know about an experience where they felt like they belonged. So one person said, I stayed at a hotel that had accommodations for disability. The room was very accessible and the bathroom too. I felt like my needs were important. Don't we all want to feel important, right? We want to feel that people feel that we're seen. Another person said, the towels were super plush and oversized to fit anyone's size. It's the small things that hotels forget that make the most for their guests at the hotel. So these are examples of people who felt like they were seen by the properties that they went and stayed at. The challenge is, as much as we like to think that we are sending signals as business owners, that we're making everybody feel like we belong, because we want to make sure that we're not making people feel bad or frustrated or uncomfortable or uncared for. But even though we often think we're sending these signals, oftentimes we're sending more mixed signals that make people feel like you don't belong here in one way, shape, or other. Here's an example. Someone said, sometimes I feel like a burden because of my food allergies. They feel like they don't belong. Another person said, just being surrounded by people that don't look like me at a hotel. Not a single person of color around. And for some people, that can be very uncomfortable. They don't like it. And I want to pause here before we go into some of the rest of this. Inclusive marketing and marketing in general is all about empathy, right? We need to make sure that we take the time to walk a mile in other people's shoes, especially the people who are different from us. And that becomes even more important because, as researchers have shown, and this was a study that was published in the New York Times, empathy is a choice. It's a choice that we make whether or not we're going to extend ourselves to others. The challenge is that empathy is least often extended to people who are different from us. And that can mean people who are different races, nationalities, speak a different language, are from a different side of town, or from a different country. So we need to remember that we have the power to extend empathy every step of the way. One person said, we were the only white family. I will never go back, right? They felt uncomfortable. Right now in the US, white people are a majority. We're about 57% of the population right now. And that is actually the lowest it has ever been. So people are used to being in the majority, and now suddenly they're finding themselves in situations as the population changes where that's not the case. And they're finding that that doesn't feel so good to them. And now they're learning what it's like to be someone who that is their life. That's what they've always gone through. That is their life experience every day. So going back to think about why empathy is such an important part of this, once we start to think about and experience what it's like being in other people's shoes, we can start making the changes that we need to make sure that the people that we intend to serve feel like they belong with us. All right, empathy fuels good marketing. It's the foundation. So let's start talking about foundations, just kind of define what inclusive marketing is. It's a new term for some people, and it's all about acknowledging the many ways in which consumers are different, intentionally choosing who you will and will not serve, and then authentically incorporating those differences throughout all phases of your marketing. Now, one caveat, inclusive marketing does not mean that you have to serve everybody. That's a very tall order and very difficult thing to do. So don't feel like you have to do that, because it'll be daunting and you'll probably never get started. There are a number of ways that people can be different, and so the idea is that you're going to choose who are the specific needs, what are the specific changes, the specific ways that people are different, that you want to make sure feel included with your brand and with your property. All right? So remember, building an inclusive brand enables you to participate in inclusive marketing, which allows you to deliver a sustained sense of belonging for a broader group of people, which will help you grow your businesses, which is what we all want as business owners, right? So let's take a minute and go through some of the highlights of the research study that we did, particularly for this conference. Okay, so the first thing that you should know is that 56% of people feel that representation in marketing is important for them when it comes to choosing a bed and breakfast, a hotel, an inn, or other sort of hospitality situation. Now, if you dig into those numbers a little further, you see that although everybody those numbers were at 56%, if you break this down by various races and ethnicities, those numbers shoot up higher. Asians, it's 63% importance, for Latinos, 68%, for Black people, it's 69%, and for American Indian and Alaskan Native, it's 72%. You're going to see this trend throughout all the data. Whenever I asked what dimensions of inclusion representation are most important to you, ability, disability came up as the top. Language spoken, age, food allergies, dietary restrictions, race and ethnicity, those are the top ones. Again, if we look a little bit closer into race and ethnicity, we'll see that race, ethnicity is a lot more important to people who find themselves a part of a minority group. So we can't just kind of dismiss it, it's not important to the overall, it's important to the people who are used to not seeing themselves represented. Okay, I wanted to know what has impacted people's decisions about staying at a hotel, inn, or bed and breakfast. So I asked them. A lot of people said language spoken, ability, disability. 1 in 4 people in terms of language. 1 in 5 people talked about ability or disability. Age, food allergies, and dietary restrictions. Again, race and ethnicity. You're seeing this trend again, which is increased for the people who are part of these populations. And then I found it interesting that one person said, I've never stayed at a hotel where there was no Black representation. I choose not to put myself in uncomfortable situations. I'm not taking the chance. So it's not just about what people experience whenever they come to your property. It's what they're feeling and what they're experiencing before, when they're researching, when they're investigating where it is that they want to stay. So we want to make sure that throughout the entire aspect of your customer journey, which includes your marketing, and even on digital properties, for instance, that you might not own or people are looking at reviews, all those things are important and play into people's decisions about whether or not they want to come and stay with you. I asked, which of the following has ever impacted your satisfaction with a hotel, inn, or bed and breakfast? Again, you'll see the same ones pop up over and over again. Language spoken, food allergy, dietary restrictions, ability, disability. Again, those numbers are higher for race and ethnicity for people who are part of minority groups. I asked people, what do you do when you don't see yourself represented in the marketing of a hotel, inn, or bed and breakfast? Nearly half the people said, we don't buy from them. They go off in search of another option that's going to make them feel like they belong. Conversely, whenever I ask them what do they do whenever they see themselves represented, 2/3 of the people said that they buy from or engage with the brand. So representation matters, and it has a direct correlation on whether or not people are going to buy from you, whether or not people are going to stay with you or not. All right? So I also wanted to know what forms of representation are most important to them, specifically as it relates to hotels and beds and breakfasts. And so employees and the staff was the top one. It was very important to 3/4 of the people. Testimonials and comments, so a lot of people are looking at those before they decide whether or not they're going to stay. Sometimes they're looking at the photos and the icons of the people to see what they look like. Of course, there's the photography, the visual imagery, featured content, and then at the bottom comes influencers and paid talent. One thing to note about the staff, because the staff was so important, some people wanted to make sure that they see people reflected like them in positions that they feel are more in power. An all-white front desk with an all-person of color cleaning staff is a huge turnoff. They don't want to see that. It's the same type of situation where I saw at that hotel at the very beginning of that story that I was telling you. Remember, people need to see themselves or who they aspire to be reflected in the visual imagery that your brand puts forth. That visual imagery can be your photography, it can be your staff. Everything tells a story, everything communicates, everything sends a signal. And people need to see themselves reflected. If they do, they get permission to take the next step forward with you. If they don't see themselves reflected, it shuts everything down, and everything that you've worked so hard for in your marketing kind of doesn't work anymore, it doesn't matter. All right, somebody else says, glad to say I never had to deal with a negative experience at any hotel or inn. I do extensive research before making any reservations. So that research part is key. Inclusive marketing isn't just about the experience that you deliver on site, it starts well before and after. All right, so we know this is important. Let's talk about 5-step framework that you can use to build an inclusive brand that'll win the attention, the adoration, and the loyalty of a broader, more diverse set of consumers. First up is company culture. Inclusive brands are built from the inside out. So it's all about making sure that you're focusing on making inclusivity and diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, not just the job of one person. It needs to permeate through the fiber of the DNA of who you are, and then you'll start to see results on the other end. So Rihanna, Grammy Award-winning singer Rihanna, an entrepreneur, she's got this ultra-inclusive brand, couple of them, but this one is Savage X Fenty. This is her lingerie brand. You'll see she's got everyone represented. She's got actual supermodels. She's got plus-size models, she's got trans models, she's got people with varying degrees of ability and disability. She's got people from the different parts of the LGBTQ+ spectrum. She's got different body sizes and types. She's got everybody reflected here. This is a photo from one of their fashion shows. And her senior vice president of the Fenty brand said that everybody is her target audience. So again, that's not the expectation of you, but she wants everyone to feel beautiful, empowered, and that strength of the best version of themselves. She has the resources to be able to do that. She wants everyone to feel that way, and that's why everyone is reflected in her marketing, and that's the mindset that they go through whenever they're doing that. Remember, inclusive brands are made from the inside out. So your brand's values are the starting place for building an inclusive brand, because everything permeates from your values. Also, we know that 71% of consumers want to buy from brands who reflect and are aligned with their values. And your values isn't just about saying, hey, these are our values, and posting them up everywhere and saying, hey, all these people belong. It goes through every decision that you make, and people can feel what your values are based upon how you live them and the different choices that you make, whether you know that you're making them because of your values or not, right? So one person said, whenever they're talking about experiences that they've had that were demonstrations of the values of the properties that they were staying at. She said the staff is very friendly and has diverse customers with all races staying at the hotel. That didn't happen by accident. That was an intentional thing, right? Because the brand valued diversity. Someone else said there were people of different ethnicities and orientations working there. There was a pride flag hanging in the common area. That was a demonstration of their values that someone else noticed, and it was meaningful to them. Again, those were demonstrations of values that made people feel good, but there's also demonstrations of values that make people feel not so good. There's no right or wrong here because everybody has different values. It's just a matter of knowing that however you communicate your values, you will naturally attract people who have those same values and repel people who have different values, right? So this person saying too many Christian items made me extremely uncomfortable. I imagine if there were Christians staying at that property, they would have been fine with it. But this person, I imagine, was not Christian, so it wasn't something that they were okay with. That's a matter of values. Someone else says, I think I ended up in a place where the clientele was primarily gay. Not my thing. Would have preferred a more mixed clientele. Demonstration of values that the consumer is experiencing. So again, as you communicate what your values are, you will start to attract the people who have similar values and repel the people who don't. All right, so what is your to-do for this first aspect of building an inclusive brand? Revisit what your brand values are. Evaluate where diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are, and how you will start to live them to bring them forth. I say it's important to incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. One of them, maybe all of them, if it's something that you feel is important to you, or it's important to you moving forward, but you haven't done the best job of it, incorporating it into one of your values makes it a priority, because then you'll start to make decisions based upon that. If it's something that you don't prioritize, then it'll be a nice to-do that never really gets done. But if you're making decisions based upon your values, which is what we all should be doing, then making sure that you have areas that are important to you that you want to extend in all your decision making is key. All right, customer intimacy is the next component of building an inclusive brand. Customer intimacy is your unfair advantage, and a lot of times when brands struggle engaging diverse and underrepresented consumers is because they have a customer intimacy issue, right? So the products, services, experiences that you deliver are like gifts to the people that you serve. Have you ever had to try and buy a gift for somebody that you didn't know? It just often doesn't go so well. So think about going to like a white elephant party, or you have an office party or something that you're going to and you have to buy a gift for a gift exchange. Those are generally not the best gifts that you receive. They're not the most thoughtful gifts. They're the gifts that you're trying to deliver that you don't want somebody to hate or re-gift, right? They're not the most thoughtful ones. The gifts that you love the most, the ones that make you feel seen, are often from people who see you, who know you very well. They know what you're gonna like, they know what you're gonna love. And the same idea is with the customers and the people that you're serving, to have that same degree of intimacy with them, that you'll be able to deliver a gift to them that they will love. All right? Ways in which brands often are able to demonstrate or to capture the degree of intimacy they have with the people they serve is through buyer personas. It's a description or customer avatars. There's a number of things that people call them. They're descriptions that people like to write of, this is our ideal customer. These are the people that we're serving. And a lot of times you'll be able to do well whenever these descriptions are the way in which you would describe your friends. You know your friends well, you have a deep degree of intimacy with them, you can get them a great gift that they will love, and the same type of thing needs to happen. The challenge is with these buyer personas, whether you have it written or not, is most often people refer to the most privileged identities. So if you're saying that you want to cater to couples, most often in people's minds, without having that specificity, the type of couples that come to mind are white couples, are abled couples, are couples of a certain body type. There are couples possibly of a particular socioeconomic stature. We need to think and make sure that we are considering all the different types of people who could be in that description, to make sure that we are able to develop the product, service, and experiences that work for them. This is especially important because thinking about the most privileged identities, that's a concept that we have in our mind, but also we need to think about what are the actual realities of the population. The population is changing. It is not what it was 20 years ago. It is not what it was 10 years ago. It is not what it was even 5 years ago. Here's a few data points for you, and these are specifically for the US. The average size of a woman in the US, interestingly enough, there aren't statistics on what the average size of a man is in the US. They only do it for women. The average size of a woman in the US is between a size 16 and 18. That's not generally what you see reflected in marketing, right? The US has the second largest population of Spanish speakers in the US. Fun fact, by the year 2050, it's estimated that 1 in 3 people in the US will speak Spanish. At the same time, by the year 2050, the US will have the most or the largest population of Spanish speakers in the world, passing even Mexico, right? 6 out of 10 households in the US have at least one person who restricts a food from their diet. 1 in 4 people in the US have some sort of disability. Gen Z, they're fast growing. It's 25% of the population and 48% diverse. Gen Alpha, that's the generation that comes after Gen Z, is trending to become even more diverse than they are, right? 42% of US adults live without a spouse or a partner. Less than half the kids in the US live in what is thought to be a traditional family with 2 heterosexual parents in the home. Women are the sole or primary breadwinner in 40% of households in the US. 10% of the population is left-handed. Where are my left-handers at? 31% of people around the world are Christian, 24% Muslim, 16% unaffiliated, and 15% Hindu. So when we start to think about these different statistics, we realize that the population is a lot more diverse, and it's changing, and it has a lot more differences and nuances than the mainstream that has been existed or presented, is a better word to say, because it's not like the diversity of all of us has just suddenly happened. It's just we've been used to seeing only a few sort of ideals about what we think people look like. So what's the fix for these things? It's to think about how you can adjust your buyer persona. So let's walk through 2 specific problems. One, people have buyer personas that are just too much like them. So whenever you're thinking about the people that you're serving, a lot of times it's just easy to say or think about people who are like you. And then of course you attract people like you. But the problem with that is you alienate people who aren't like you. So then marketing and programming ends up with a lot of people who look the same, some people who don't look like, saying, hey, this isn't for me. This is another Instagram account that I came across when I was shopping one day, and then I decided I'm not shopping here because again, this doesn't look like it's for me. So the fix for this is to intentionally choose who you will include and exclude from your personas. So a great question to ask is, does your persona include or exclude people with a different what from you? Include people from a different sexual orientation than you? Does it include people with a different race than you? Does it include people who have a different religion than you? Start going through and asking those questions, and it'll help you. Remember, your customers' demographics influence their psychographics and their behaviors. So when we're capturing data, it might be easy to think that people are compartmentalized, but we don't compartmentalize our lives like that. So the fact that I have a mixed race child influences a ton of my decisions when I'm thinking about a family. It influenced where I decided that we were going to live when looking for places. It influences books that I buy for her. It influences doctors that I get for her. It influences what she's watching on YouTube, right? There are a number of decisions that we made were influenced by our demographics. So we need to make sure that we're thinking about how are the demographics of their customers influencing even the messages that you're sending them and how they're going to receive those messages. We can't afford to ignore our customers' differences because those differences influence a lot of how we view and see the world. So again, we talked about ways in which our customers are different. So let's walk through an exercise for a couple of brands to see how they might have gone through this exercise of saying, all right, we're going to choose which of the people we intentionally want to serve. So David's Bridal sells a lot of wedding dresses. Actually, they sell 1 out of 3 wedding dresses in the US, right? But how did they get there? Because they're a very inclusive brand. So for me, looking at their marketing, I would say that they've specifically chosen they want to serve people with different races, ethnicities, heights, geographic locations, sexual orientations, weight, socioeconomic status, and physical disability, right? So if you were to go and look at their website, you will see real customers, people who are in same-sex relationships. You will see interracial couples. You'll see tall couples, short couples, people in wheelchairs. You'll see people of different races, different ethnicities, different ages, different body sizes. They've got everybody covered, and all these people are able to see themselves represented, which of course has to contribute to the number of sales that they have, right? Let's look at another example. This is a brand that I follow on Instagram as well. His name is Kevin Curry. He has a brand, Fit and Cook. If he would have done this exercise, I would say that he would say language and dietary restrictions are differences that I want to make sure that I accommodate. So if you go and look at his Instagram, for all of his content, he writes it in English and in Spanish. Every video he makes it, he's saying it in English, and he's got the Spanish copy in voiceover. Written in a caption below. If you go to his website, it's available in English and in Spanish, and he also does a number of recipes and lets people know how you can switch things out to make it work for whatever dietary restriction you might have. Another buyer persona problem is that people often have too few. This is me battling out with scissors because a lot of people in the past didn't make scissors that worked for left-handed people, right? So brands don't have enough buyer personas often because they want to focus their time, their attention, and their resources, especially if they have limited resources. The problem is customers with unique needs ultimately end up ignored, feeling like they're ignored or underserved. So one person said, hey, people are allergic to feathers. So it's a challenge whenever they go to a hotel, they go someplace, and all the pillows have feathers in them. Someone else says, amenities that don't include shampoo and conditioner or pillowcases designed for textured hair. Someone else says, I'm not a huge person, however, I would be considered a plus-size person. The towels would not fit around my body. And then she just kind of goes on and on talking about the skyrocketing prices. You would think they'd be able to get a towel that's a little bit bigger. Someone else says, I need grab bars in the shower. This is probably somebody who has some form of disability. Someone else says, I've stayed at numerous places where there was nothing to eat on the menu for me. They're vegan, and the staff wasn't open to making any type of adjustments. Someone else says, I went to a hotel and I asked them for a room with a fridge, and they didn't provide one so I could store my breast milk. It made me upset knowing I made this request and I wasn't being able to be followed. Interestingly enough, I saw in the airport coming here yesterday, they have these pods for women who are breastfeeding, and they can go in and have that privacy there. So this is popping up more and more and more, having accommodations for people who are breastfeeding. I need my dog to be welcome. There was a small cohort of people, but they were very vocal about their dogs. They want to make sure that their dogs are available, but not just any dog, because they also feel like big dogs are discriminated against, because sometimes when people will let small dogs in, but but their big dogs are not allowed, and that's a real problem.
There's an insurance question.
Conveying the message. So remember, the focus should not be on how customer differences inconvenience you. If we define that we want to serve people, we need to make sure that we do what we need to do, we can within our means, to make sure that we're bringing people along so that everyone who's staying with us can achieve a degree of success. So the fix is to make more personas. Think about the question that you would ask and know whether or not you need another persona is, how would the marketing or the execution of what it is that we're doing change if this person was, and you would fill in the blank. All right, so how would the marketing change if this person were Black? If the marketing doesn't need to change, or the product, services, experiences you delivered aren't going to change, you don't need a separate persona for them. How would this change if this person is body feeding? Okay, I might need to do something else. How would this change if this person were gay? And just kind of go through this list, and that'll give you an idea of whether or not you need to make more personas. How do you know if your personas are not inclusive enough? I've got 3 things for you. 1, the customers that you serve are not representative of the population of the people who have the problem your business solves. So, if you are a property that serves everybody, but only women show up, then something in your marketing or something in your experience makes men feel like they're not welcome, right? So if you don't have like an equal sort of footing of the type of people who have the problem, that's a good signal. If you have high attrition rates from certain groups of people, that is a signal that you're not serving their needs well, right? And then lastly, customer feedback. People tend to be very, very vocal. And the more and more consumers are speaking up about when their needs have been met and when they're not being met, right? So we have to view their feedback as a gift, because for every one of them that's giving you that feedback, there are probably 10 more that didn't give you that feedback. So this is an opportunity for you to know what people are really thinking. So what's your homework here? Reevaluate your buyer personas to ensure they are inclusive of the different types of people that you want to serve. Remember, you don't want to be sending signals that you don't belong here to people that you intend to be serving. For the people that you don't want to serve, ciao, see you later, right? But if there are people that you want to make sure that you feel like they belong there, you need to make sure that you're not sending them signals that make them feel otherwise. Third step in building an inclusive brand is to diversify your circle of influence. The challenge is that most of us have very homogeneous networks. And this is actually a scientific principle. It's called homophily. Basically means that birds of a feather flock together. And it shows that we tend to hang out with people who have different backgrounds, ways of thinking, experiences, views of the world. And the challenge with that is it makes us feel good, and we get to hang out. I know people curate their Facebook feeds so that they're only seeing people who think like them, and they've been deleting and blocking people who have opposing viewpoints. But then you only have one view of the world. You don't know how other people think. And so what you need to maybe be able to keep your Facebook space a safe space emotionally. As a business owner, sometimes it's harder to do that because we all think differently. So we want to make sure that we're taking the blinders off so we can have a broader view of what it's like for other people who are different from us, especially if we want to be attracting them to our businesses. So this is my mom and my 2 sisters. And like I mentioned before, I follow a gluten-free diet for health reasons, and my sister Deborah, she's the one in the middle, she also follows a gluten-free diet. Before us, my mom had really no experience with people with dietary restrictions, but she saw what me and my sister would have to go through, having to make sure we always have snacks in our bag before we go somewhere, sometimes eating before we go to an event or a restaurant because we never know if we're going to have stuff that we can eat. Just always trying to prepare ahead, look for menus for restaurants in advance. So what she started doing is, whenever she would go shopping, she would pick up gluten-free substitutes of the things that we like to eat when we're at her house. She found recipes. She learned how to make things gluten-free so that we would always feel welcome whenever we're in her home. She always has stuff on hand, like if we suddenly or spontaneously at her house, she's got some gluten-free pasta. If she's making pasta, she can whip some up. And she always wants to make sure that we feel welcome and like we belong. She isn't gluten-free, but because of her proximity to us and observing us and the empathy that she exuded for us, she is able to have a better idea of what life is like for us, which equips her to better serve us, so we always feel welcome in spite of the differences that we have. The same idea is what you want to have for the people that you're serving. So if you decide that there are communities specifically that you want to serve, that you are not a part of, spend time with them, and then you will learn the nuances. Sometimes surveys and market research helps, but just the course of building relationships with them, you will learn things that will help you figure out how to best serve their needs. So here's some examples that I learned from people just from doing this survey. I wish people realize that larger people want to travel and feel as though their money is as important as straight-sized individuals. Oftentimes, larger guests will find themselves without towels, hard-to-reach items, and not much space between furniture. That space between furniture was something that popped up several times. People with food allergies and restrictions should have an opportunity to get everything that they paid for. So people with allergies that aren't accommodated feel like they're getting gypped. If I paid for free breakfast at this establishment and you have free breakfast and none of it is gluten-free, I didn't get what I paid for, right? They're upset about that. I'm a larger woman who could use a little extra space around the bed, especially with rooms with 2 queen beds. That space thing comes up again. I was traveling with my service dog and was put in a less than suitable room. When I asked for a nice room, I was told that all guests with pets were put in that room. I explained that my service dog was not a pet and that they could not discriminate based upon their explanation. It took a mention with DOJ to be transferred to a more suitable room. I didn't know that service dogs are not considered pets, but the more you talk and engage with people, the more you learn different things that allow you to be better equipped to serve them. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is also an important thing here, and we have to think about also when it comes to delivering these products and services and experiences that make people feel like they belong. Sometimes it isn't all about the wow things. It's not always about the delight. Sometimes it's just the baseline things of getting people's needs met. So for people with dietary restrictions, I have to be able to eat. Like, eating is fundamental. If I can't eat or I'm having a problem getting fed, then I'm not going to notice all the nice touches that you put in place, right? For someone mentioned that I wish they knew that as a gay person, safety is my only real issue. I don't need a parade of pictures of gay couples and ads as much as I feel on site that I'm welcome and protected. So how might they feel welcome and protected? Remember that person earlier said, hey, I saw a pride flag. That was a signal that they noticed that made them feel welcome and protected. So what do you need to do? Start building relationships with people who are part of the communities you've identified, that you want to serve, that you are not a part of, and you will learn a ton. All right, we're almost there. Customer experience design is the 4th one, step in the part of the process of building an inclusive brand. It's all about creating a vision for the experience that you want to deliver and thinking about that, especially from an inclusivity standpoint. Now, it is important to remember that all forms of inclusion aren't created equal. So I have what I call the inclusivity spectrum that kind of walks you through what these different levels are. One, there is exclusion marketing, which is something that we don't want to be practicing. That's when you just kind of not thinking about people who have differences and you don't cater to their needs. That's me without ice cream and everybody else's ice cream, because they didn't have gluten-free ice cream at this place, so I was quite upset about that, just so you know. next level on that is a little better than exclusion marketing is raise your hand if you're different, right? Everybody with differences doesn't always want to sound the alarm about it, right? So it's nice that you have accommodations for people, better if you have accommodations for people that don't make them have to let the world know how they're different. Something that stood out to me a couple years ago, I read Shonda Rhimes' book, The Year of Yes, and she talked about an experience where she was on an airplane. This is before she had lost about 100 pounds, and she needed a seatbelt extender. And she's going through this in conversation in her mind, and basically she's like, I would rather die and fall out of my seat and fly out of my seat than have to raise my hand and ask for a seatbelt extender. Because for her, that was humiliating, and it just was something that she didn't want to have to do. I feel not humiliated, but frustrated every time I go to a restaurant and I have to ask for the gluten-free menu instead of them just having it marked on the menu specifically, right? Those are ways that you force people to raise their hand to acknowledge their differences. The third thing on the spectrum is called You've Got Options. That's where, for instance, on the menu, you let people know these are the things that you can eat based upon whatever your restrictions might be. Even better than You've Got Options is Your Normal. This is me at a restaurant in Argentina where everything on the menu was gluten-free. And everything on the menu didn't taste like it was gluten-free. It was a restaurant that was delicious that people who had no food allergies or food restrictions wanted to eat at. So we would go to this restaurant and I would feel normal. I didn't have to ask any questions about what was on the menu, right? I just felt like I was like everybody else. Someone actually said, I love it when I don't have to ask for accommodation because it's already available. And the last one is exclusively for you. When you're designing an experience specifically for a group of people who have differences. Someone talked about their experience at a place, this is a larger property, where there were 3 floors just for women who were traveling that were single. And that was going back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, making sure that they felt safe. And they had done a wonderful job of making sure that access was restricted only to people on that floor, and that was something that stood out for her. That was exclusively designed for single women travelers. All right, so choose where you want to be on this inclusivity spectrum, and then take the time to evaluate how you're measuring up. So we all like to think that we're doing one thing, and we look one way or performing one way, like this cute little puppy sleeping. But in reality, sometimes the experience that we deliver, how we're performing, looks completely different, like this other dog who is enjoying his sleep, right? So the big question is there alignment between the customer experience vision that you have, that you want to deliver, and the experience that you are actually delivering? The only way to know that is to set a vision for the experience and then audit your customer experience through and through to see whether or not it adds up. And then you can build a plan on how you might need to fix it. All right, the last pillar of building an inclusive brand is customer experience delivery. This is where everybody really wants to start and focus their energy on, because this is a lot of times what people see, but you have to work on all the other ones because they lead you to here. So inclusivity should be baked into your product development and launch process. And your product isn't just your property as a whole. It can be the pillows that you select. It can be a menu that you design. It can be the social media account that you do. Everything is a product, right? So how can you make sure that you bake inclusivity into that development process? Now, sometimes inclusive marketing means creating new products. So if you go through your audit, you figure out that you need new products to meet the needs of a specific persona. That's what KFC and Burger King did whenever they introduced plant-based meat. The Impossible Burger, there's a lot of people who go and feel included now. They had to create this. In this case, they partnered with somebody else to be able to deliver this new product. And then sometimes inclusive marketing means you don't have to change anything about your product. You just have to start marketing to new people that you weren't marketing to before. That's what craft beer as a poll, that's an industry. This is an article that came out in the New York Times that said they found that their growth was stagnating. And the author writes, they had to start marketing beyond people or white dudes with beards. Once they started doing that, they recognized, hey, black people like craft beer once you start marketing to them. Latinos like craft beer once you start marketing to them. And we saw that over and over and over again. They didn't change their product, they just changed who they were talking to. So the more you design products, services, and experiences with inclusion in mind, the broader group of people you will be able to win the attention, adoration, and loyalty of. Another way to do that is through your content and your copy. Remember, people are doing a lot of research in advance. They're coming to your website, they're looking at your social, they want to hear what you say. The words and the phrases that you use make a big deal for them. I was on David's bridal site when I was doing some research for something else, and I saw they were talking about they live for the moments. They talked about that included weddings and quinceañeras. Quinceañeras is very popular in Latino culture. For people who were reading that statement, if they were not part of that culture, seeing quinceañera has no impact on them. But for people where that's important to their culture, they see it and like, oh, that's for me. We belong here. Something simple, and that was very intentional that they put that in there. But the words that you use, the copy that you use throughout every part of your material is important. I spoke at a conference a couple of years ago, and this woman, I don't know if she was complimenting me or not, she's like, up until Sonia came on, I felt invisible because everybody was in their 20s. I don't know if I look like but she said she felt invisible. Ageism was a real thing. We want to make sure that we're not making the people that we want to serve feel invisible. So how do we make sure that the visual imagery that we're putting forth makes them feel seen? Remember, I said it before, but this is so important. I want to make sure you get it. People need to see themselves or who they aspire to be reflected in the visual imagery. So think about your social media accounts. Think about your staff. Think about the photos you have on your website. Are the people that you want to serve, are they able to see themselves reflected there? Nike does a fantastic job on this. Their mission is to inspire every athlete. Who do they consider an athlete? Anybody with a body. You see on these photos, there are all different types of bodies up here, right? And there are a number of people who are able to see themselves reflected because there isn't just one definition of what an athlete is. This is a photo of a display at Target. It's February, we're in Black History Month. And this photo was sent to me by a friend. She sent it to me and my mom and my sisters and my cousin in our group chat because she was so excited about this Black History Month display at Target. Celebrating special events like Black History Month, Pride Month, Women's History Month, whatever it is, Hispanic Heritage Month, in whatever way, these are important ways to signal to the people that you want to serve, that you see them, and that you know the things that are important to them, and that lets them know that you belong there. So that is one way that you could think about creating a special calendar of events and decide what are the things that we want to serve that are important, what are the events and special occasions that are important to the people that we want to serve. These are me and my girlfriends. We were in New York a couple of years ago, and we all live in different states. We wanted to get together for dinner. I chose the restaurant that we went to because why? I'm the only one that's gluten-free. We went to a restaurant that 99.5%, as our marketing says, of everything on the menu was gluten-free. We all had a beautiful meal, delicious food, and a great time. But the thing that I want you to remember for this is the niche consumer is often the lead consumer. So when it comes to inclusivity and thinking about how you can best use your resources, Sometimes it's better to design for the niche, and in those cases, you will win the masses. So, if you know, for instance, that some people are allergic to feathers, could you just make all of your pillows not have feathers in them? So you're designing it for one type of person, but it works for everybody. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know very much about pillows. But here is someone who said the same type of thing, where they were having a great time at a hotel in Amsterdam, and then people were very friendly and very nice, and then their two friends showed up who were gay, and then suddenly the treatment of everybody started to change. What would happen? So now we have an instance where somebody who has a difference isn't treated well. This person who was being treated well now feels uncomfortable. He's never going to go back. The niche consumer, in this case his friends, his gay friends, is the lead consumer. People don't want to know just how you're treating them. They want to know how you're treating the people that they love and they care about, right? If the people that they love and they care about, or people who are part of communities that they love and they care about, aren't going to be able to participate, if the restaurant doesn't have gluten-free stuff, we're not going. If this isn't going to be friendly or accommodating to my gay friends, we're not going. If I can't bring my kids, we're not going, right? The people who have the niche needs, the unique needs, they are leading the people, I call it the spillover effect. They're having that impact on others because they're the ones who are the priority in choosing. So a way to rectify that situation is to design for the niche, and then it will help you win the masses. All right, so what do you need to do? Revisit your marketing strategy and how you execute it to ensure that you are sending signals throughout all parts of your customer journey that says you belong here to the people that you want to serve. Remember, business is about belonging. Whenever you send those signals to the people that you want to serve, that they belong with you, they will reward you their attention, their adoration, and their loyalty. When they don't feel like they belong, they will go off in search of another option that does make them feel that way, and they will spend their money there. So send signals that people belong, they'll spend their money with you. All right, that's it. So I think we're gonna ask a bunch of questions. Here's my contact information here. Quick little note on my Instagram. If you go there, I just created a page this morning because my previous one got hacked this week. So it's me. If you go here, just know that there will be lots of great content coming up. So hope to answer your questions and interact with you a little bit afterwards. But thank you for laughing at my jokes.
And we have some mics that will carry around, so if folks have questions, we'll bring a mic your way.
Okay.
Darling.
Jump in. Hi, Sonia. I would be interested to have you tell me a little bit more about what you consider. How would you know what your attrition rate is?
Well, there are a number of people who, do you keep track of like who might be a return guest or visitor? Right, so if you were to look at your data and see the different types of people who return or get data, or I imagine you might be collecting information on all the different types of people who come to your property. If you were then able to look and see, all right, the people who return are a lot of people who have kids. It'll be more easier for you to see if there's different types of people who return, and then look at, are there other types of people who they just seem to be one-timers? And that'll probably give you a good idea of being able to measure what your attrition rate is. It's not always so scientific, but sometimes it's just a matter of trying to piece together some of the data that you do have, but it really depends on what data you already have.
Sonia, I have a question for you, and it relates back to the slide that you showed about Black History Month, and looking at your calendar and trying to incorporate some of those things into your calendar. Can you offer some suggestions about how to really do that well, really to do it more genuinely? Because I think a concern is always that you're going to come across as doing that genuinely, or just posting something to have it posted.
So the first rule, is a great question, is to make sure that you are not engaging with that community only at that time, right? So it's kind of like showing up for somebody's birthday and then ghosting them the rest of the year. The only time you show up is for their birthday party, and then you don't talk to them ever again, and until the next year it comes time for their birthday party. That's the first rule. The second thing is, it's always helpful to co-create with people who are part of the communities that you want to serve. So if you want to create a Pride Month campaign, it would be helpful to find people who are part of the LGBTQ+ community to help you put together whatever type of programming, offering, celebration that you plan on doing. That can be people within your community, it can be people like your staff, it can be people that you go out and seek out and hire to help make sure that what you're doing, and depending on the scale, that is always helpful, to help you figure out if what you're doing, and to make sure that what you're planning is authentic and that will be received well by the community. Yeah. And then the third thing that will help, is circle of influence. So making sure that you spend time with those communities, because the more you spend time with them, the more you will learn what types of things to say, what they appreciate, what they don't, and that gives you more insight into how to do something that will be respectful and that they will feel appreciated. Yeah.
Your presentation was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your statistics were great in the beginning. I guess where I have a hard time is I want to pull statistics from my customer base and everything. Is it appropriate to send them surveys and things like that, or stay away from that?
A survey around what? Asking them like what their experience was, or?
Similar to some of the questions that you asked and presented up there.
I think so. I feel like I get a survey from everybody, right? I get a survey from the airline, I'm gonna get a survey probably from this hotel when we leave. Everybody asks surveys these days, so it's not, people are used to it, so it's not an issue. The key is to make sure that you're asking questions that will help people give you honest and robust answers. Ask questions that make people feel that you genuinely care, right? So a survey that says, how likely are you to recommend Hilton to your friends? You don't care about me, right? So I'm not gonna answer that question. But if you say, what about your experience was wonderful? What about your experience could have been better? And you have that genuineness that and then they'll see, if they actually see you making changes based upon their feedback, then people will gladly give you that information. So surveys is definitely okay. One thing to note, if you decide that you want to ask demographic questions on your survey, one, make them optional, and two, help people understand why that information is important. So my husband went to the grocery store and he filled out a survey, and he's like, at the bottom they asked me like what my race was, and he's like, he decided not to answer it because he's like, he couldn't understand why the grocery store needed to know what his race was, and he's like, are they gonna give me different prices based upon that? He just was frustrated with it. So people are okay giving you that sort of information if they understand how it will help you better serve them, right? So just think about, surveys are great, but just know that it's more of that help me help you type of thing. If you position it that way, people will be much more willing to give you the information. Yeah.
100 years ago, when I was a young girl, I worked for Sears Roebuck in Rochester, New York. And on the application, they had the word coins on the bottom. And the interviewer circled
Caucasian, Oriental, Indian, Negro, or Spanish. And years later, they paid dearly for that. Are we able to maintain a database that says what the race or the ethnicity of a person?
Yeah, you
Federally?
can.
Okay.
You can. Now, the terms that they're using weren't cool.
Of course.
Right? So you want to make
As
sure
I
that
said.
you're using the terms, but also you want to make sure that if you're asking the information, make it optional so people can opt in or out of giving you that information. A lot more people are sensitive to that these days. So you just want to make sure that they can give it or they won't, right? One thing to know.
No, this would be an observation by someone checking them in, which was exactly what it was at Sears. The interviewers served.
Oh, see, that's
where they paid. That's why they paid dearly for it.
That's tricky because you can't always look at somebody and know where they're from or what their race or ethnicity is, right? My husband is Latino, but he looks very white to people, right? So until somebody hears him speak, they're not going to have an idea in a lot of instances. So you run on a slippery slope with that. One other thing to note is gender. Whenever you're asking this question, more and more, it's not okay to just have male or female. And it's not okay to have male, female, other, because people don't want to feel othered if they don't want to check one of those boxes. So there are a number of ways that people are starting to ask that question to get the information that allows people to feel respected in how they're giving those choices. I think the idea is you can ask the question, but remember, help people understand why you need the information and what you would do with it. How will you having this information make them have a better experience? If you can't answer that question, there's no need for me to give you the information.
Thank you.
Hi, Sonia. I also really thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, so thank you so much. I really loved the examples you gave of Nike and David's Bridal as being brands that were impressively inclusive. And unfortunately, the example you gave of the accommodation business was not. And I wonder if you have, for those of us who would like a great starting point for how to make our brand obviously inclusive within hospitality and accommodations. Do you have any businesses that you know are doing that really well? Oh no.
There is opportunity, and I think some of it means having data that helps you understand who the people that you serve are, and then doing something with the data. I'll give you an example. We're flying to Argentina for vacation the beginning of March. I'm gonna fly an airline that I fly all the time when I go to Argentina. And every time I call them and make my reservation, I have to call back within 30 days of flying to tell them that I need a gluten-free meal. There's no way for them to see that on my profile. Like, you can remember my frequent flyer number, you can remember my passport, right? But you can't remember that I need the gluten-free meal. They've asked this question over and over again, but I always have to go back and do it because there's not a way they haven't designed a way to remember these details. People said over and over again, I wish they would just follow the profile that I have and keep in mind the profile so that they can accommodate based on that. So short of being able to have a profile in every person and customizing the needs, I would really say it goes back to identifying what are the different ways that people are different that you want to make sure feel seen with you, and then start to brainstorm ways that you can accommodate whatever those differences are in a manner that makes them feel like, oh, they get me, right? It can be as simple as starting with dietary restrictions. Can you have people have a customized menu, or at least have options for gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, and vegetarian, right? Those are simpler things. Well, I say simpler. Could you have big towels that work for everybody? So it doesn't matter what their body size, but just have bigger towels. Those simple little things are starting points, but once you start on the path, it'll open a new world to you. You'll start to see opportunities everywhere. People will start to communicate it and give you suggestions everywhere. So another thing to do is just to let people know the journey that you're on, and they will start offering up examples to you and ways that you can serve them better. And that'll just kind of make it and help allow you to make it more customized to the people who are coming to you. Right? So the thing is, as much customization that you can, but in a scalable way. Right? So that just is more of anticipation of the ways that people could be different. One other quick thing that somebody said on the survey, I know Carrie had mentioned to me that you all are business owners who love to pamper and cater the people who come to your property. And somebody mentioned that somebody got sick, or they needed some lactose-free milk or something like that, and the people went out of their way to go to the grocery store and bring back some lactose-free milk for their grandkids, and they're just like, I'll never forget it. Sometimes it's, even if you haven't planned in advance, but someone expresses a need that they have, being willing to try to accommodate it goes a long way, even if you haven't done it in advance. Just hearing them, seeing them, and having that empathy is more than enough for most people.
A question here. Sonia, while you were doing your presentation, I was looking around this room, and I mean, my eyesight isn't as good as it used to be, but as far as I can tell from where I'm standing, you are the only Black person in the room. And I wonder if that says something about our industry as a whole.
No.
It means that we need to be more intentional, right? So there are many spaces that are very white or very homogenous. So go back to that term that I showed earlier, homophily. We naturally, as people, gravitate towards others who are like us. So if you want to get to a place to where you had a more diverse membership or just more diverse spaces, you have to intentionally work to make it so. So think about, how do you get people into this organization? How do you recruit them? How do they find out about it? And then create a value proposition, because going back to some of those slides that I showed at the very beginning, some people are very uncomfortable being the only or being one of a few. So you have to create a strong enough value proposition that allows them to feel comfortable knowing that, hey, you might be one of one or one of three or one of a few right now, but this is something that's very important to us and we are prioritizing it. And these are the things that we're doing to get here. And to change the dynamic and to change the makeup. And that goes for whatever organization you're in, it goes for whatever staff you have. Now, this isn't something that happens overnight. It isn't always something that happens in a year, but it's something that whenever you set a goal, you can then build a plan and methodically work towards it to get to the type of distribution or mix and the type of diversity that you would like to see.
Sonia, real quick, on my particular website, it is devoid of people pictures.
Okay.
Good, bad, indifference, thoughts, comments on that?
People like to see people. They connect with people, right? So remember, people need to see themselves or who they aspire to be. If I were looking at a site and I couldn't see any pictures of people who look like me, I would assume that there aren't going to be people who look like me there. For me, and for some people, that's no big deal. But for other people, it is, right? So if you to make sure that people can see themselves, then you need to put pictures of people. Now, there is a hierarchy, right? Like, so stock photography works. There's also custom photography that you can do, like paid actors and models. And then there's photography of actual customers and people. That's the order, right? So at a minimum, if you need photos of people, stock photography is a good place to start. And there are many sites that are more and more starting to have photography of a diverse group of customers. And then go to custom photography with like models and paid talent. And then even best of the best is having photography of actual customers. So the more you diversify your customer base, the more you can get photos.
Now, a lot of our pictures too are of experiences. The hot tub with the champagne glasses filled, the hot tub, the steam coming up, where there is not a person in the picture. But again, as a consumer, I could see myself in that setting, regardless of my race, color, or creed. Same thing with some of our romance packages. You can see the roses and the chocolates on the bed and the rose petals on the bed. And if you're going for an anniversary, I don't need to see somebody celebrating their, somebody who's 85
right.
laying on the bed because they're celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. Put yourself in that picture. I mean, that was just a philosophy that we had, and
I get it. I get it, and for some people that doesn't matter, but representation does matter. So, I'll give you an example. This isn't about politics, right? But we have a female vice president right now in the U.S. That meant something to a lot of people because, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was possible for me until I see somebody like me in this position. I didn't know it was possible for me to have champagne in the hot tub until I saw somebody like me having champagne in the hot tub, right? There are some people, they need those dots connected and the visuals will do it, and then there are other people, it doesn't matter, but you're catering to the niche, the people who need to see it, and that will play itself out for you.
Hi, Sonia. I am a former alumni of the Select Registry environment. I applaud to this because I'm a former human relations manager as well. However, this is just a little self-promotion of this organization. I'm staying about a block away at an SR property right now. Incredible cookies that I tried, and she goes, they're gluten-free. They're all gluten-free. So SRNs get it in so many ways. So you're talking to the right audience.
Wonderful.
It's a good group.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment based on Mark's question, as an innkeeper and as someone who, in any industry there are standards, and I think for photography, for our websites, one of those ideas is what he was explaining in terms of minimizing people in the photographs and setting more scenes. And I think a lot of us probably do that, but a great place to incorporate those photos to show people having that experience, I think, is in our social media. Our Instagram, our Facebook, those are places people go to exclusively to look at photos, and that's where you can really, propagate that imagery that's different from what's on the website.
Yes. Now, another thing to consider, that's a great point, because social media is often the first place that people go to sometimes. And sometimes people are tagging themselves at the different properties. So they look to see how they've done that so they can see actual photos of real people. Another way to do that is if on your social media, for instance, you are featuring other businesses, other brands, other content from different creators. If you have a diversity of the different types of people that you're showcasing, that is another signal that, there's somebody who has a diverse perspective and they can get it from that way. So there isn't one way to do it. Social media provides a lot of different opportunities, but that's another way that you can show the visuals. Yes.
I've really enjoyed this as well. One of the questions that I have is if you really are marketing to a particular niche, like in our case, we market to couples. I feel often sad if I'm talking with guests who want to bring children. How not to offend those who are in a different niche in what we are marketing to, because just in our circumstances of what we offer, it just would not mesh well at all to have children in our context. And yet, at the same time, I don't want to offend those who have children. Many of our guests do have children of their own that they're leaving at home.
Right.
So what suggestions would you have for me to not offend an outside niche?
Just be very clear about your guidelines, right? There were a lot of comments about children versus not children in the survey. I didn't put that because I had a feeling that that wasn't the degree of difference that was a bigger challenge for people. But people noted over and over and over again, they went to a place, they hated the fact that there were kids there because they were noisy, they were whatever, like they just hated it. And then there were other places where people went to a place and they loved that there were activities for their kids. There were other people who, there was just a number of people who talked about being upset about their expectations not being met, whether in regards to they were there with their kids and there was nothing for kids, they were there without kids and there were kids there. So as clear as you can be on all your materials, your website, your social media, and then reinforcing it. It's okay. You're not going to please everyone, right? And it's just, this is just who you are catering to. It's the same type of thing for dogs. There are some properties who might welcome dogs, and there are going to be people who are like, that's not for me, right? And vice versa. So it's just a matter of being clear and being firm, knowing that no matter what you do, sometimes people aren't going to be happy, and that's okay. The idea is to welcome the people that you want to serve and direct the people that you don't want to serve someplace else.
It seems that even if you don't want to appeal to, I don't know, certain diverse groups or whatever, it seems like there's still maybe an argument to show diversity because people who maybe aren't in those groups want to still stay at a place that has values similar to them, which might be more diverse. I don't know if that makes sense. But, you know, so in other words, even if you don't buy into, well, that's not a group of people that I want to cater to or whatever, the ones that you do want to cater to that you're assuming are, you know, in a different group or whatever, still have values that say, I want diversity, and I'm not going to stay there because I don't see any diversity, even though I'm still in the group that you're marketing to.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. It's okay because you're not going to be for everyone, right? So if your values say one thing, and there are people who don't align with your values, if they choose not to come to you, even though they're in your target customer group or ideal customer, that's all right, because you want to be a professional repeller, right? Because if you have somebody who is not aligned with your values, and then you start attracting more customers who are not aligned with your values, you're not going to be able to provide the ideal level of service to the people who most belong with you or who you most want to feel like you belong. So don't feel like you have to try to make every possible person happy. Remember, design for the niche and you will reach a broader group of people. There will be some people who will self-select and say, no, that's not for me because I'm not seeing whatever type of proof or signals that work for me. That's okay. But the people who align with your values will naturally be attracted to what it is that you're doing, and just focus your efforts there.
Good morning. Excellent presentation. Just some observations. We have 3 innkeepers. One is Latino, one is Irish American, one is Dutch-born Canadian American. We speak 5 languages, at least between the 3 of us. We attract about 12% African Americans. We attract a large group of Latinos. But we don't have a single picture on our website. So we ask people, why do you show up? Why do you come? Most of them go to your personal websites. They go to your personal Facebook page. And they will form a judgment about who you, as an innkeeper, are. So I don't think it would do much good to, on your personal page, show that you're a member of the KKK and put a couple of pictures, of colored people on your website. That doesn't work. It doesn't convince anybody. What we have found is that it is really the comments of people who have stayed with us that is most critically important. One of our first guests that came were 2 gay men. One happened to be the marketing manager for one of the major hotel chains. I recently stayed with him. As a matter of fact, I stayed with him last night. Anyway, I don't want to mention who specifically, but they said some very nice things about us. That we were understanding, etc., etc., etc. So I think it isn't just a question of advertising on your website, but actually living who you are.
Absolutely.
You cannot be somebody else.
Absolutely. So going back to one of those data points, when people are asking how do they want to see, in what areas of a property makes the most feel like they belong, or the marketing, believe comments and testimonials was number 2, besides the staff. And people are doing their research and they're reading their comments. I do a lot of research, and if you see that somebody wrote something in Spanish, that means it's probably a decent property. They have something that works well for Spanish speakers, right? That's an easy thing. That's something that's important for me now. So you're absolutely right. The social proof is more important sometimes than those visuals, but they all work together, right? So, but if you've got strong social proof, fantastic.
But very important in the answers that you give to the comments. Because frequently people will say, my partner and I were there and we very much enjoyed it. You don't have to lay it on. You can say, yes, we loved having you here. It was a wonderful experience. We learned from you, etc. Answer their needs. They express who they are. Recognize who they are.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. It was lovely meeting you.